Shalom. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Vayechi, beginning with verse 28 of chapter 47 of the book of Genesis. This portion essentially focuses on the final years of Yaakov in Egypt, having now been reunited with his son Yosef. The portion of Vayechi concludes the book of Bereshit, Genesis, and also closes the era of the patriarchs. Yaakov, whose life began in the land of Canaan, ends his complex life in Egypt, having known many troubles, but having been finally reunited with his beloved son Yosef, following which he lived out his final years as his happiest. On his deathbed, he blesses his grandchildren, Yosef's sons, and afterwards gathers all 12 of his sons and bestows his blessing upon them. This week, I'd like to focus on these blessings. These blessings, poetic, veiled, and frankly, at times as perplexing as riddles, are more mysterious than understood. At least, they're not readily understood. But they reveal that Yaakov was aware and possessed intimate knowledge of the qualities and inner nature, even essence, of each of his children. His words also gaze into the future, and he sees, prophetically, each of his sons' descendants through all the coming generations. So his words also bespeak awareness of their divine missions as well as their respective challenges. His words also feature both warnings and assurances. But first, we can reflect upon the fact that this portion, which records with detail the death of Yaakov, is called Vayechi, and he lived. Of course, this is similar to and immediately reminds us of what we encountered earlier in Bereshit regarding the portion of Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah, which in reality recounts nothing about her life, but rather the story of her death and burial. These people were truly alive and taught us so much about life and how to live. Small wonder that our sages state cryptically in the words of the Midrash, "Our forefather Yaakov did not die." This is not to be understood literally, but the man, and that's the amazing thing, he's only a man, yet he bested an angel and also had angels at his command. And this man was so much more powerful than death, so that, as is the case of the truly righteous, this illusory life could not contain him any longer. Thus our sages teach, the righteous are even more powerful in death than in life, and they are called alive even in death. Thus our portion is aptly called Vayechi, and he lived. So if you open up your heart and you could understand it as, and he lived forever. But this man, called by our sages the perfection of the forefathers, certainly had the most difficult life of all the three patriarchs, as attested to by the Torah. And this man has two names. As opposed to Avram, whose name was changed by God to Avraham, and who after this change was never ever again referred to as Avram, we may still freely refer to Israel as Yaakov. But perhaps a more accurate appellation would be to refer to him as Yaakov / Israel. For indeed, God himself refers to him in this very manner. After changing his name, God still alternates between both names when addressing Yaakov, and later the prophets will do the same thing in referencing him. On a level that is perhaps the most accessible to our paltry understanding, the two names can be said to represent two distinct and different spiritual levels. Simply put, perhaps this is even an oversimplification, Yaakov represents the individual and a lower state of consciousness, while Yisrael represents both the national level of the soul of the nation and a higher level of inspiration, of consciousness, perhaps a prophecy. As a rule of thumb, this formula works when applied to many verses throughout the Torah and prophets. But this dichotomy is also representative of the many layers and stages of Yaakov / Israel's life, which reach their apex in our parsha. And thus, we're not so surprised that in our parsha, he's referred to by both names, sometimes even within the same verse. So approaching death, the patriarch blesses his grandchildren, Yosef's sons, giving the preferred blessing to the younger one, and perhaps thereby finally putting to rest the tension which has manifested itself as the recurrent theme of battling brothers, which we've been witness to throughout this book of Bereshit, beginning with Cain and Abel, the first brothers, through Yaakov and Esav, and down to Yosef and his brothers. Yaakov's blessing to Manasseh and Ephraim became the blessing that's recited by every father in Israel over his children every Friday night at the start of the Sabbath, as the verse, chapter 40 and verse 20, instructs us. So he blessed them on that day, saying, with you Israel will bless, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and like Manasseh. But the more we attempt to understand the nature of this assembly of the sons around Yaakov's deathbed and the essence of the blessings themselves, the more perplexing it becomes. In the blessing to Reuven, we read, chapter 49 and verse 4, you have the restlessness of water. Therefore you shall not have superiority, for you ascended upon your father's couch. Then you profaned him who ascended upon my bed. And in the blessings to Shimon and Levi, chapter 49 and verse 7, Shimon and Levi are brothers, stolen instruments are their weapons. Let my soul not enter their council, my honor you shall not join their assembly, for in their wrath they killed a man, and with their will they hamstrung a bull. Cursed be their wrath, for it is mighty, and their anger, because it is harsh. I'll separate them throughout Jacob, and I will scatter them throughout Israel. So, are these words of a blessing? If that's a blessing, then what's a curse? In fact, in verse 7, Yaakov says, cursed be their wrath, using the word arur, which is actually a curse. So, in the face of this confusion, this is an ideal opportunity for us to examine the concept of a blessing. What does it really mean to bless someone? And backing up, what does blessing really mean? After all, it's a word that we use all the time, upon occasion, perhaps rather mindlessly at that. God bless you. You're a blessing on your head. I feel blessed, etc. Bless your heart. That's what they say in Texas. And in our prayers, we bless God every day. Now, for a word that we use so often, do we even know what it means? On the simplest level, blessing someone is generally understood as wishing them well. Now, some of Yaakov's statements to his children don't seem to fit in with what we would consider a blessing. And if we bless God, are we wishing him well? How does that usage fit in with God bless you? We bless God, God bless you, bless, bless, bless. And we would assume that the meaning of God blessing someone is that we are voicing the wish that he should bestow goodness upon that individual. So when I bless God, am I bestowing goodness upon him? Bearing all this in mind, and these are just some of the questions we can consider if we begin to seriously try and understand what a bracha, a blessing, is all about. So now, okay, some want to see the word bracha, blessing, as connected to berech, the knee, perhaps an allusion to bending the knee when uttering a blessing. But further study substantiates that from ancient times, the word bracha has been interpreted as some sort of gift. So, fast forward to our time, we have Google. So when we Google a definition for the word blessing, we find plenty, and I quote, noun, the act or words of a person who blesses, a special favor, mercy, or benefit, the blessings of liberty, a favor or gift bestowed by God, thereby bringing happiness. Praise, devotion, worship, especially grace said before a meal, as in the children took turns reciting the blessing. Continuing in Google, blessing is defined as God's favor, or a person's sanction or support, or something you ask God for, or something for which you are grateful. When God looks down upon you and protects you, this is an example of God's blessing. When a father okays a marriage proposal, this is an example of blessing. A blessing is a prayer asking for God's protection, or a little gift from the heavens, as in, I give you my blessings, which could simply mean it's okay with me. People give their blessings to ideas and actions when they agree with them. Giving a blessing is often the same as giving permission, God's favor and protection. Okay, end quote from Google. I find these definitions to be wholly incomplete. That's wholly, W-H-O-L-L, incomplete, inaccurate, and mostly contradictory. So open up your hearts in the deepest way. This is the deepest secret in the world. The word bracha is related to brecha, which means a pool, a source of ever-flowing water. When we bless Hashem with the words Baruch Atah, blessed are you, what we are really saying to him is, you are the overflowing source of our lives. You are the brecha, the giver of life, eternally flowing, ever renewing, Melech HaOlam, not simply King of the universe, but the hidden universal majesty, not blessed are you. What would that even mean, blessed are you? But Baruch Atah, you are the source of all life. So Baruch is about connecting to the source. In the case of blessing Hashem, it's about acknowledging, thanking, and connecting with him as the source of life. Another example of this inner meaning of the word we can see in the Talmudic usage of the word brecha as describing an ancient method of agriculture in which a branch of a tree, for example, is replanted in the ground while it's still attached to the original plant. As it's growing out, you grab it and you plant it. So it's bent over and placed into the ground. It grows forth from another point of origin, but of itself and as itself, sprouting forth from the source. Thus, on a deeper level, now open up your hearts in the deepest way. Blessing a person, such as when Yaakov blessed his children, requires an understanding of the person, because this blessing is a calling to their higher inner essence, to strive to reach their highest self, to connect to the source. I'm blessing you that you should connect to the source of yourself. So the blessing has to be tailor-made for the individual. Now Yaakov's highly individualized blessings to his children reveals his intimate understanding of the inner nature and essence of each one, his intimate understanding of their source, and in his prophetic wisdom, he designed the perfect blessing for each one that would encompass the future generations as well, of all their descendants. He knew who needed to be warned of what, and what to be on guard of according to his particular character and the challenges that could potentially trip him up, and the tests that were bound up with his mission and destiny according to the root of his soul. Now, as everybody knows, according to our sages, this whole scenario of Yaakov delivering these blessings was actually plan B. Because the first two verses of chapter 49 relate to us. Jacob called for his sons and said, "Gather, and I will tell you what will happen to you at the end of days. Gather and listen, sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel, your father." But he never did tell them about the end of days, at least not directly. So we learn that Yaakov sought to reveal to his sons the secrets of the end of days, but lost the vision and thus was prevented from on high from divulging this information. There's so many reasons that we can think of as to why this might have happened, why Yaakov was prevented from giving over this information. For example, if they had that information, if we had it, if we all had it, then how would that influence free choice? Bring about the redemption, after all, should be left up to us through our good deeds. And if we knew when it was coming, maybe we would be lax. But in a reflection of his original intent to reveal all that would befall them from now until the time of the redemption, although that prophetic window was closed for him, and he was withheld from revealing the details of those secrets, he did include allusions as to what their future holds in these words. But in keeping with our understanding of bracha, as connecting to the source, it's as if, listening, open your heart. It's as if he was saying to them, this is who you are. I know you, and this is who you could be. This is what could go wrong, so be careful. And this is who you are called to be. Just like the formula of blessing Hashem, Yaakov was really saying to each son, you too are overflowing with your own potential. Like the old slogan of the United States Army, be all that you can be. So we're ready to conclude this first book of the Torah. The mission of the people of Israel began with Hashem's first words to the father of the Jewish people, Avraham. He said, Lech lecha, go for yourself. Avraham went on a journey to the land of Canaan that began a process which concludes in our book of Bereshit with the descent of all of his children, the descent of Israel into Egypt. Thus indeed, the book of Bereshit concludes with the word Mitzrayim, Egypt, which literally means the narrow place. Indeed, with the descent of all of Israel into the land of Goshen, there to survive, or where they more than survive, they actually flourish. They begin to multiply in great numbers, temporarily doing well, and all of this facilitated by the great Yosef. But shortly, as we will begin to learn next week in the book of Shemot, Exodus, this descent becomes a nightmare, indeed a narrow place, constricted, a dark exile of bondage, servitude, torture, and genocide. And Egypt is not only a geographical location or a reference to this particular time in history. Throughout history, at times, as individuals and as a nation, we do and will find ourselves in narrow straits, confined and subjugated, whether physically or spiritually, whether by others or by our own failings. Each year, we conclude this book of Genesis and then begin the book of Shemot to relive the descent into the darkness of Egypt. And there, each of us, again, as individuals and as a nation, within our own Egypt, the narrow, constricted, and dark place where we call out to God, where are you? There in that space, each of us goes through what we need to go through to grow, to learn to call out to Hashem, and to make preparations to leave Egypt behind us forever, to finish the walk that Abraham started towards the final freedom of the final redemption. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Be strong, and let us be strengthened.